Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into the hidden hero of modern electronics. It's this tiny, totally unassuming component quietly living inside almost every single device you own, from your smartphone right down to your washing machine. And yet, most of us have absolutely no idea how it works. Yep, we're talking about the capacitor. Let's actually kick things off with a little mystery. Have you ever wondered how a camera flash can instantly unleash such a massive, blinding burst of light? Or, how those life-saving defibrillators manage to deliver such huge jolts of electricity right on demand? Because here's the thing, a standard battery simply cannot pump out that much power that fast. No way. So how do these devices actually pull it off? Well, let's break it down. When you compare our mystery component to a standard battery, the difference is literally night and day. See, a battery relies on chemical reactions to release energy slowly and steadily over a long period of time. It's basically a marathon runner. But a capacitor, it stores electrical energy in an electric field, which allows it to act way more like a rapid-fire energy dump. It's a sprinter, capable of blasting out its stored energy in mere nanoseconds. So, here's our game plan for today. First, the hidden energy storer. Second, conductors and dielectrics. Third, the hydraulic analogy. And fourth, powering everyday electronics. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the hidden energy store. What exactly is this thing? At its core, a capacitor, which, fun fact, was originally known as a condenser in the early days of electronics, is a passive device that stores electrical energy. It does this by accumulating electric charges on two closely spaced metallic surfaces that are completely insulated from one another. Now, the exact amount of charge a capacitor can hold at a given voltage is called its capacitance, and we measure that in a unit called farads, named after the famous physicist Michael Faraday. Moving on to section 2, conductors and dielectrics. Let's look at the physical anatomy. You might be surprised, but the basic structure of a capacitor is shockingly simple. You just have two electrical conductors, usually metallic plates or thin films, separated by a non-conductive center. We call this insulating barrier a dielectric. And to maximize the charge the capacitor can hold, manufacturers use incredibly common everyday materials for this dielectric layer. We're talking glass, ceramic, plastic film, paper, mica, and sometimes even just plain old air. So let's track the chronological journey of the electrical charge when you connect a capacitor to a power source like a battery. Step 1. Voltage is applied to the terminals. Step 2. Electrons get pushed onto one plate, making it negatively charged, while electrons are pulled away from the other plate, making it positively charged. Step 3 is where the magic happens. Because these plates are so close together, those opposite charges desperately want to attract and reach each other. But they're completely blocked by that non-conductive dielectric. This tension creates a really strong electric field across the gap, which stores potential energy. And finally, step 4, once the plates are totally full and the voltage of the capacitor matches the source, the current stops flowing entirely. It's fully charged and just waiting to be unleashed. Let's hit section 3, the hydraulic analogy. This will help us really visualize the physics here. Because electricity and electric fields are completely invisible, this can all be a little tricky to wrap your head around. But the crucial takeaway is how perfectly this electrical system maps to a tangible water pipe. Just imagine a pipe with water flowing through it. In this analogy, the electrical voltage is your water pressure. Now imagine stretching an elastic rubber diaphragm completely across the inside of that pipe. That diaphragm is our capacitor. As water pressure increases on one side, it pushes and stretches that rubber diaphragm. The water doesn't actually flow through the rubber, just like electrons don't flow through the dielectric, but as the rubber stretches, water is displaced. This displaced volume of water represents our electrical charge. The stretched rubber is now holding potential energy, just exactly like a charged capacitor. And expanding on that analogy really shows us something cool. A capacitor behaves very differently depending on the type of electricity you feed it. If you use direct current, DC, which is a steady, one-way pressure, the diaphragm stretches until it literally can't stretch anymore, and then the flow of water entirely stops. This is exactly why capacitors block direct current. But if you use alternating current, AC, where the pressure rapidly pushes back and forth in both directions, that elastic diaphragm simply flexes back and forth right along with it. So it basically appears as though the water, or the electrical current, is passing straight through the barrier. Now, of course, there are absolute limits to elasticity. Just as a physical rubber diaphragm will literally burst if the water pressure gets way too high, a capacitor experiences a physical failure if the electrical voltage gets too extreme. This phenomenon is known as dielectric breakdown. Basically, the electric field gets so incredibly strong that it just forces its way right through the insulator, which, as you might guess, usually destroys the component entirely. Let's take a super quick historical breather here, because it is fascinating to trace this technology over the centuries. Back in the 1740s, early European experimenters created the very first capacitors using literal glass jars filled with water. They called them Leyden jars. They'd charge them up with static electricity to perform these really dramatic sparking demonstrations. Fast forward to the 1930s, and a pioneer named John Atanasoff realized that a capacitor's ability to either hold a charge or be empty perfectly mapped to the ones and zeros of binary code. He actually began applying them for digital memory in the very first electronic computers. Talk about a game changer. Which brings us to Section 4, powering everyday electronics. Let's look at modern applications. So we finally have the definitive answer to the question we asked at the very beginning. Because capacitors can dump all their stored energy in a matter of nanoseconds, they are the absolute go-to solution for what engineers call pulsed power. When a camera flash goes off, a capacitor that was slowly filled by a small battery suddenly unleashes its entire payload all at once. And this exact same principle of massive, instantaneous power spikes is used to drive radar systems, pulsed lasers, and even those massive particle accelerators you see in physics labs. But hey, they aren't just about explosive power. Capacitors also act as microscopic electrical shock absorbers. In a process called decoupling or power conditioning, capacitors get placed in parallel with sensitive circuitry. So if the main power supply spikes, the capacitor just absorbs the excess. If the power sags, the capacitor discharges a little bit to fill the gap. This keeps the electrical supply completely clean and stable. And that is absolutely vital for sensitive audio equipment, where you want to eliminate any of that annoying, buzzing power line hum, and for computers that require perfectly smooth voltage to even function. Now, in more brute force industrial applications, alternating current capacitors are specifically designed to handle incredibly large currents. They're actually used to create electrical phase shifts to kickstart really heavy electric induction motors. If you have an air conditioner, a refrigerator, or a washing machine in your home, I guarantee there is a large, rugged motor starting capacitor inside doing the heavy lifting every single time that appliance kicks on. And connecting right back to Atanasoff's 1930s invention, capacitors are the absolute backbone of modern computing. Billions, and I mean billions, of microscopic capacitors are etched right into silicon chips to form dynamic random access memory, or DRAM. The temporary, volatile memory inside your laptop or smartphone right this very second is literally just billions of tiny capacitors constantly being charged and discharged to represent ones and zeros. It's kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it. Furthermore, capacitors happen to make excellent sensors. Remember how we said capacitance is directly affected by the distance between the two plates? Well, if a physical force pushes the plates closer together, the capacitance changes. Because of this, they are used as highly sensitive detectors in condenser microphones to pick up sound waves, and accelerometers to instantly deploy your car's airbags during a crash, and get this, even in your smartphone's touchscreen. The electrical properties of your finger actually alter the local electric field on the glass. And today, the technology just continues to evolve. While traditional electronics use capacitors that hold a tiny, tiny fraction of a single farad, modern material science has unlocked a completely new tier, the supercapacitor. By using highly porous materials like carbon aerogels and nanotubes, engineers can create massive surface areas within the plates. As a result, modern supercapacitors can hold up to an astonishing 5,000 farads of charge. That bridges the gap between a traditional capacitor and a battery in a massive way. Which leaves us with something pretty fascinating to ponder. As material science continues to advance and these supercapacitors gain the ability to store more and more energy while still charging and discharging in seconds, we really have to wonder, might the capacitor one day make the slow, chemical rechargeable battery completely obsolete? It's a shocking thought for sure, and one that could absolutely revolutionize how we power our future. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the incredible technology hidden all around you.